Hey everybody, this is Perch. Let's get right to this mail. It says, "Hey Perch, I'm answering a lot of mail lately. It's just the nature of traveling around, and I'm doing a lot of videos from cars. I tried my first video from an Uber. Asked the guy like, "Can I just do this? We're gonna be on the road for 40 minutes, going to this location. I'm just gonna record this video." He's like, "The guy's like, I don't care." I can only imagine. I mean, I'm not gonna do that again. I'm looking at the guy's face through the rearview mirror in the back seat, and then like he's looking at me like I'm a dumbass, and I feel like a dumbass. We're not that. I'm not gonna inflict Perch on people. That's just a bad idea. Anyway, hi Perch, says the mail. I just listened to your "Is DC Destroying Marvel Right Now" video in response to a Screen Rant article. I feel many have been wanting film and television to drive a larger audience to the comics with the same frenzy as 1989 Batmania, but it hasn't materialized. Yet I do see many people, wearing the shirts, the shoes, the hats, and apparels featuring these characters. That's true. By the way, one of the reasons for that is nostalgia is hot, and nerd culture, and that using air quotes there, is hot. And so you see a lot of kind of stores that are leaning hard into that, be it, places like Box Lunch or Hot Topic or Mimiso. Is that how you say it? Anyway, what other things? You got a bunch in there that my daughter likes to spend all the money in. Anyway, um, that you're seeing a lot. It's a business at the moment. The comic publishers are not making much money on this business, by the way. That's kind of the scary downside to that. A lot. I mean, those licensing deals, especially in bulk, they make very little. But and these licenses have been sold on the cheap historically. Now that will change, but still. Back to mail. Says, I wonder, and this is more my question, anime seems to drive readers to the manga, and I feel this is due to the anime often being very faithful in look and tone to the source material. Could the same occur in American comics as there's animation that looked like the comics? Into the Spider-Verse is very entertaining, and yet where can I read stories featuring Miles Morales with the same bonkers level of imagination? That's kind of a different problem you're identifying there, but we'll get back to that. Or when DC published Batman the Animated Series, it looked like the show and even had writers and artists. It looked like the show and even had writers and artists from the show, which I felt kept a level of tonal quality that was satisfying as the actual animated episodes. What say ye? Is a cohesion between anime and manga what helps drive sales? Could Marvel and DC achieve the same? Really enjoy your channel and commentary. Hit like and subscribe every time. Every time. I don't think you're supposed to hit it every time. Well, maybe the like button, but what's happening? Are you subscribing and unsubscribing every day? Yeah, maybe. Anyway, so a bunch of things here. First of all, Marvel is absolutely dumb as shit for not putting out a Miles Morales comic with the same art style and general feel as the Into the Spider-Verse film. It is criminally stupid that they don't. I can't begin to understand why they don't. A lot of Marvel editors are on Instagram looking at artists and everything else as part of a talent search. There are a lot of kind of half anime, kind of pseudo manga, hyper. Look, I'll give you a different, a different name. Eric Canetti. Eric Canetti, his style is, I would say, in the same zone as Into the Spider-Verse in some cases. He has that same kind of hyper, exaggerated kind of approach that, you look at the two. I don't know if Eric Canetti used to listen to his channel. He may still, I don't know. But you look at the two and you wouldn't necessarily say these are the same, but they're familiar. If you are Marvel and you hired Eric Canetti to do Miles Morales ongoing, and you got a writer who could write with that same kind of energy, and you leaned out of, hey, we're going to do a bunch of, long issues of family drama. And keep in mind, Into the Spider-Verse had plenty of drama. Obviously, if you watch those movies, it did, but also had this kind of frantic action. You would sell like crazy. That is just the biggest no-brainer in the world, and the fact that Marvel doesn't do that is criminal. As a quick aside, by the way, if you have kids, you may have seen a film called The Bad Guys. In The Bad Guys 2, the sequel, my family watched that. We really liked that. There is a scene in it toward the end where basically the crew, the heroes of the story. I don't know if that's the right word to describe them, but basically they are climbing a rocket, and you'll know it if you see it. That is one of those visually awesome sequences. It's just so good. And I don't, I mean, like, if you let me know in the comments if you've seen that. It's such a good sequence for an animated film. And if you think about comic books and just pure action and visual storytelling, it's great. Anyway, um, but they absolutely should do that for Miles. I don't get that one at all. Why they're not doing more there. Anyway, to the heart of your question though, I do think that you know the success among an anime is not only because they're tied to each other, but it definitely helps. One of the big arguments that people would have against this idea, if you did it for comics, and I've pitched this idea many times, is that comics have different styles. So if you look at just faithfully transcribing Batman over the years, you're going to get radically different artists. You get a Neil Adams, you'll get a Dennis Cohen, you get very different styles of art as it goes. Um, I think the answer is you do have to kind of pick one. You can't have the art style changing from episode to episode. Even One Piece does a little bit. I mean, it's still clearly Oda, but you can tell when there's different studios and people in the mix. But I think you could shift a little. But I would go and basically look at that run and say, what style do we want to do here? Do we want to do a George Perez like style? We need to have something that feels familiar to the character and to the run. And once you have that, you kind of lock that in, and then you say, all right, we're going to faithfully adapt the comic. And I think that's the way you handle that situation. It's not that hard. It would help a lot. I think that from a pure sales perspective, it makes all the sense in the world to have a comic and a series tightly connected with each other, where you could basically have the two bounce off each other. Faithful comic fans will watch the series. People who are watching the series are going to come into the comics and know where to go. You've heard this problem of, hey, if I want to start at reading Batman, where do I begin? Well, first of all, it's not that hard of a problem. But if you have an animated series that's adapting the comics and people like that series and, they want to get ahead on the comics to know what happens next in the series, it'd be really easy for them to do that. So, I mean, that's got to be just mission number one, get that done. Um, I don't know why they don't do this. It truly is one of the weirder choices that I think these studios make. It's of course very hard for the indie books, but if you're Marvel or you're DC, you've got this library in your hand. You have access to animation studios, way cheaper than other things. If you're talking about the profitability of how you maximize comics and other pieces of material, cheap animation, being able to plug this stuff in, easy way to do it. And I just think the idea is right there in front of you. It would be relatively, I mean, certainly more expensive than producing comics, but still relatively cheap in the grand scheme of things. That's the answer. Western man, come on, go forth. Um, that is what you should do in order to kind of put these two together and really get these fandoms coming together. And I think right now what comics needs, I said it in another video, it's got to grow the channel. By growing the channel means get more people interested in comics, get more people looking for them. The animation audience and the comic reading audience, it's like a Venn diagram. There is overlap, but not nearly as much as there could be. If you start making some connections, you could do that. Now, I've also heard the argument of like, well, you're going to run out of comics to adapt. I mean, sure. But look, if you went and you decided, hey, we're going to do the way I would do the X-Men, by the way, is I would start with Giant Size X-Men #1. I wouldn't start with actual X-Men #1. I'd start with Giant Size. And kind of like One Piece does flashbacks all the time, sometimes excessive flashbacks, I would do flashbacks using Cyclops as the character. You have how many comics for Cyclops left after the Dark Phoenix saga? 30? Trying to just off the top of my head. I think roughly around 30 comics. So some of those comics would be two shows. You wouldn't just adapt. I think you could. I don't know. Maybe some comics would be half of a show. Some would be two shows. Anyway, I don't know how many episodes you'd have, but you have basically 30 episodes where you can use Cyclops as kind of your cipher. Later, I guess you could use Professor X, and you can basically do flashbacks where you cover the important parts of the initial X-Men run. So you get to still get into those stories and adapt those too, just in kind of a different sequence. But I would do that. And then, like, look, if you're talking about adapting those comics, y- I mean, you have 200, 300 comics to adapt. You have like 8 seasons worth of material that you can get through before you have to worry about anything. And and then, you have Superman, you have Justice League, you have Batman, you have Flash, you have Captain America, you have like the Mark Grunwald run alone is like 7 seasons worth of material. I mean, there's just so much there. And I think that is the clear answer. I don't know why they do it. Anyway, I've pitched this idea before, so you guys are probably sick of hearing it, but I think if you do this, it's your best way to, one, make some money because these shows would, two, sell some additional comics, but most importantly, it will grow the channel. It will get new people into comics, and the idea is right there, and you own all those comics. You don't have to pay any licensing. It's right there. Anyway, what do you think? Would you watch a series like that? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and thanks for listening. Actually, you don't have to hit that. I mean, I don't care. I mean, do what you got to do. YouTube's going to remove it anyway randomly because that's what they do. Thanks for listening.